As a general rule, we want to avoid seeing straight lines through the body. We're favoring curves, actually. So the line of action is actually an imaginary line that goes through the body that tries to describe the entire pose in a single stroke. It's like trying to reduce all the detail of the body into a single graphic line. So we're going to take Kayla and we are going to have her jumping up in a ballet type pose. Now ballet is great because it has, by its own nature, a nice flowing line and directionality to most of its poses. But it also is graceful and she's meant to seem like happy and almost as if it took no effort. Because we're animating, we are also going to exaggerate the pose, so she jumps really high into the air, and we're going to make sure that all the limbs have this nice sense of direction. To create dynamic poses, we will think about the body as a collection of graphic shapes, and the more flowing or angular those shapes are, the more dynamic the end pose will be. It's really important to create your poses by placing first the three main shapes of the body, which are the hips, the chest, and the head. In animation, we're always simplifying our designs to make our readability much clearer. Think of the line of action as a simple C shape or an S shape. You can also create the reverse of a C or the reverse of an S as well. Very rarely do you want some things to be like an I, perfectly straight and rigid. You can also notice in the video that I take time to actually pose all of the parts of the body and all of the controllers, going from the tip of the toes all the way to the hair. It's important that you add these little elements because by default, 3D characters look very stiff and dead, and to make them feel more dynamic, we do have to do a bit of manual tweaking here and there. So to make a strong line of action, we want to make this line as strong as possible. We're going to take it all the way up through the leg, up through the spine, past the head, and right out the arms. Even push the fingers along the line of action and stretch them out so that the pose is even stronger and more dynamic. Now, one of the things we have to learn when posing is to know the limits of the rig that we're using. As you can see over here in the groin area, we've got this weird deformation happening, and that's going to influence how we actually pose the leg. We'll have to find a compromise where the leg still looks stretched and dynamic, but is not really adding those horrible creases that we're seeing here. It's also important when we're designing dynamic poses that we don't push the pose so far that the character goes off model. Kayla can be off model if we move her limbs or features so far that she starts being less recognizable as the character that she was originally designed. So even when making poses, we have to think about that there are some limits to what we can do with the character, just so she remains recognizable. So now that we've blocked out our pose, we can start refining it by using the grease pencil tool. If we come up to the viewport and click on the little icon that has a marker pen on it, we'll bring up this panel and push the plus button to create a grease pencil frame. And we can select a color and a pen tool and start roughing out the line of action as an inverse C shape. Then we can go into our tools, select a new color, and the curve can also go through the arm, so we can rough that out to give it a bit of sense of flow, and then we can think about what the forward leg should flow in. So I'm just creating some curves that look like some tangents that come out of the main line. With this setup, I'm going to use those rough curves that I made, and I'll continue modifying my pose. Now, it's a great technique to draw over your poses because sometimes it's really hard to pose things inside of the 3D viewport, but as soon as you draw a curve or a few guidelines, it instantly becomes much easier to see what is wrong with your pose. We again have some problem of some creases appearing in the groin area, but here's where I can share with you guys a pro tip on how to fix your poses by sculpting them with blend shapes. What we need to do is select the mesh for Kayla's leg and go into Window, Animation Editor, Shape Editor. We'll get a new pop-up window and we'll click on Create Blend Shape and add a new target. Now you can see that Kayla already has many blend shapes and these allow the rig to deform naturally. However, we're making a new blend shape that will be right at the bottom of the list. I'll then go into the Maya Sculpting Tools shelf and choose the grab brush. I can change the size of the brush by holding down the B key and dragging with the mouse. You can also change the brush pressure by pressing M and also dragging with the left mouse button. With the grab brush, we can push the polygon of Kayla's leg around on the screen, almost as if they were made out of elastic. I can hold down Shift and the left mouse button and drag, and this will smooth out the polygons. We can also take the sculpt brush in areas that are heavily creased and extrude out some polygons and make them smooth until the geometry looks nice and finished. You can push the shape of the legs with any modeling tools you'd like using any of the Maya available tools. I'm just using the sculpt brush to do a quick job here. The blend shapes are additive shapes that work on top of the base geometry. If we go back to frame 1, you'll see that now Kayla is in a T-pose, but we can see some wrinkling as the blend shape is now deforming her leg. The good news is that we can key this value on and off by saving a keyframe in the shape editor. So if we go back to the shape editor and go to frame 2, we can key the blend shape by pressing the circular button at the end of the list until it turns red. We can then come back to frame 1 and pull the slider to 0 for the blend shape, and Auto Key should automatically add a keyframe here for us, turning the shape on and off. Now this is a demo, but if I was going to animate a whole sequence using this technique, I'd make the blend shapes and key them just before finishing the final animation.